My family excluded me from the Hawaii Christmas trip at my sister's insistence, so I told her and her husband to move out of my house, where they were living rent-free. I also ignored my parents' phone calls, but now they're pleading with me to reconsider. It was a warm July evening when I pulled up to my parents' house during summer break after 3 years away at college. These visits had settled into a predictable routine: Mom's overzealous hugs, Dad's awkward shoulder pats, and the endless string of questions about my studies, which only thinly veiled their lack of real interest. "Maya, sweetheart," Mom called out from the porch, her voice bursting with excitement. "You're just in time for dinner. And guess who's coming over?" I didn't need to guess. Jennifer, my older sister, and her husband, Tom, had made it their personal tradition to drop by whenever I was home. It was as if they needed to remind everyone of their endless success stories. Sure enough, 2 hours later, we were all gathered around the dining table. Mom had set out her special occasion tablecloth, the delicate lace one that only saw the light of day when Jennifer was visiting. So, Jennifer began dramatically, setting down her fork with a flair she'd perfected over the years. "Tom and I have been thinking. We should all go to Hawaii for Christmas." Mom literally clapped her hands like an excited schoolgirl. "Oh, that would be amazing." Dad grinned with pride. "What a brilliant idea, sweetheart." Jennifer turned her gaze toward me, a familiar, mocking smirk tugging at her lips. "What about you, Maya? Think you can afford it? Or does big sister need to help you out?" I felt my cheeks flush, but I kept my voice even. "I can handle my own expenses, thanks." "Are you sure?" Jennifer arched an eyebrow. "Because it's going to run about $3,000 per person for flights and accommodations." I nearly choked on my water. $3,000? That was more than my entire savings account, and I was scraping by on minimum wage from my part-time jobs. But I'd rather survive on ramen for 6 months than take charity from Jennifer. "I'll manage," I repeated firmly. Jennifer just shrugged and turned back to our parents, completely unfazed. "Well, anyway, the restaurant's doing fantastic. We just hired a sous chef straight from Italy. Can you believe it? Authentic Italian cuisine right here in town." "You're so entrepreneurial, darling," Mom gushed. "Maya, you should really take notes from your sister's business savvy." "Yes, Maya," Jennifer added, her tone dripping with condescension. "Maybe you could even work for me one day." Sitting at that dinner table, watching my parents dote on Jennifer and enthusiastically discuss Hawaii, I felt like I was 10 years old again. Nothing had changed. Mom's eager nods, Dad's proud smile, and the ever-present feeling of being invisible. They were all still there. Jennifer was still the golden child she'd always been, the one they believed in, the one they were sure would accomplish great things. "Remember when Jennifer won the school business competition in 10th grade?" Dad would often say. "We knew then she had that entrepreneurial spark." The thing is, my parents weren't cruel. They didn't intentionally hurt me or put me down. They just forgot I was there sometimes, like I was a background character in the Jennifer show. Thank goodness for Grandpa Joe. He lived in that big old house with the wraparound porch and the creaky swing. He was the only one who had enough love for both Jennifer and me. A successful businessman himself, he'd promised to pay for both our college educations early on. When Jennifer left for college, I was 13. I thought her leaving would finally give me my chance to be in the spotlight. I was wrong. Jennifer just called. Mom would burst into my room, practically glowing with excitement. She joined the debate team. "We should visit this weekend." Dad would chime in at breakfast. "We can take her some spending money while we're there." They'd spend hours on Skype with Jennifer, her voice filling the kitchen as they cooked dinner. Meanwhile, I'd slip out the back door and head to Grandpa's house. Those afternoons with Grandpa became my escape. We had our own little routine: mint chocolate chip ice cream on his worn leather couch, old movies on his ancient TV. "You know what's great about Casablanca, Maya?" he'd ask, pausing the movie. "It's not the obvious hero that matters. It's the quiet one. The one who does the right thing when no one's watching." Grandpa taught me how to fish too, taking me out to the lake behind his house on weekends. "The best catches," he'd say as he helped me bait my hook, "aren't always the ones making the biggest splash. Sometimes, it's the quiet ones swimming below the surface that are the most special. Sitting in his little fishing boat, watching the sunlight dance on the water, I felt like maybe I didn't need to be the favorite to be loved. Grandpa made me feel seen in a way no one else did, after 5 years of family dinners and countless achievements. Always Jennifer's, of course. She graduated college with honors, landed a job at a prestigious firm, and started dating Tom. Naturally, my parents were over the moon and immediately decided he was perfect for her. Meanwhile, I was preparing for my own college journey. The day I left for school, Grandpa hugged me tighter than ever before. His embrace felt different, urgent, almost like a farewell. "I love you so much, Maya," he whispered. "Never forget that." I laughed, brushing it off. "Grandpa, you're acting like we won't see each other again. I'll be back for Thanksgiving." He smiled softly, that gentle expression of his. "Just remember what I said, kiddo." 2 months into my freshman year, Mom called. Her voice cracked as she told me Grandpa had passed away in his sleep. For a moment, the world seemed to stop spinning. I sat frozen on my dorm room bed, phone pressed to my ear, unable to process her words. The funeral was held on a cold, gray day. After the service, we gathered at Grandpa's attorney's office for the reading of his will. Jennifer sat poised in her designer black dress, while I fidgeted uncomfortably in the scratchy, last-minute one I'd bought from a discount store. "To my daughter, Sarah," the attorney began, "I leave the sum of $50,000. Mom nodded, squeezing Dad's hand. "To my granddaughter, Jennifer," he continued, "I leave the sum of $300,000. Jennifer's face lit up instantly. She turned to Tom with a triumphant smile. "Baby, we can finally have that dream wedding. And still have enough to start our restaurant." "And to my granddaughter, Maya," the attorney said, "I leave my house on Maple Street, including all its contents and the surrounding property." The room fell silent. Then Jennifer burst out laughing. "Oh my God! Maya got the old house? That's hilarious." She wiped at her eyes, tears of amusement glistening. "Don't worry, sis. Maybe you can sell it and buy yourself something nice. Though I doubt anyone would want that creaky old place." "Jennifer!" Mom scolded, though it was half-hearted at best. But she was already smiling as Jennifer launched into plans for her wedding. "We'll have it in the spring," Jennifer announced. "Tom and I already have the perfect business plan for the restaurant. This is exactly the capital we needed." True to form, Jennifer threw herself into wedding planning with all the energy of a hurricane. The event was extravagant. White doves, ice sculptures, a 5-tier cake, and what felt like half the town in attendance. I stood beside her in a bridesmaid's dress she'd picked out, watching her and Tom exchange vows in what Mom proudly called the social event of the season. Even before the honeymoon glow faded, Jennifer and Tom opened their restaurant, Bella Vita, Beautiful Life. The local paper featured them in an article, praising their entrepreneurial spirit for bringing authentic Italian cuisine to our small town. Mom and Dad framed the article and hung it proudly in their living room. Meanwhile, I was left to figure out what to do with my inheritance. The property taxes on Grandpa's house weren't small, and maintaining such a big old place wouldn't come cheap. After crunching numbers one weekend, I thought I'd found a solution. At the next family dinner, I brought it up as casually as I could. "I've been thinking about the house," I started, trying to sound confident as I pushed green beans around my plate. "Since I'm at college most of the year, I could rent it out. That way it could cover the taxes and upkeep." A heavy silence followed. I glanced up to find Mom and Jennifer exchanging one of their signature looks, the kind that always meant trouble for me. Jennifer's husband, Tom, suddenly became very engrossed in his mashed potatoes. "Oh, honey," Mom said, her tone dripping with condescension. "Why would you rent to strangers when your sister and Tom need a place to live?" I blinked in surprise. "What?" Jennifer set down her wine glass with an air of exaggerated patience. "It just makes sense, doesn't it? Tom and I could really use the extra space now that we're running the restaurant. And obviously, you're not going to charge your own sister rent. That would be ridiculous." "Of course it would." Mom chimed in immediately. "Family helps family." Just like that, the conversation shifted back to their favorite topic, the restaurant. Mom nodded along as Jennifer gestured animatedly about a new wine import, and Dad grinned approvingly. Tom finally looked up from his plate to join in. I sat there, my fork frozen mid-air, as the reality of what had just happened sank in. I could protest. I could point out that it was my house, my inheritance, and my decision. I could remind them that Jennifer and Tom had already received a massive sum from Grandpa's will, while I'd been left with what now felt like a burden. But I knew it wouldn't matter. They'd look at me with that familiar mix of disappointment and irritation they always did when I didn't fall in line. Mom would sigh about family loyalty, Jennifer would make snide comments about my selfishness for weeks, and Dad would give me that look that said I was just being difficult. So, as always, I swallowed my objections along with my now cold green beans and stayed quiet. The following weekend, Jennifer and Tom moved into my house. Jennifer sent me photos of the changes they'd made. Grandpa's cherished leather chair replaced by some cold, modern couch, his beloved fishing photos taken down to make space for framed restaurant reviews. While I crammed for midterms in my tiny dorm room, Jennifer and Tom lived rent-free in my house every time I returned home for breaks. I had to ask for permission to visit what was, by law, my own property. Fast forward to that summer dinner. I dove headfirst into work with a renewed sense of purpose. Between my early shifts at the campus cafe and late nights at the study library, there was barely time to catch my breath. But every time I thought about giving up, I'd picture Hawaii, and that gave me the push I needed to pick up extra shifts whenever someone called out. By late November, when Jennifer called, I had the $3,000 saved, almost every cent I'd earned over the last few months. Send it today, she instructed, saying she needed to finalize the bookings. My hands trembled with excitement as I transferred the money through my banking app. That weekend, I treated myself to a swimsuit. Not anything extravagant, just a simple blue one-piece on sale. My friend Lisa even let me borrow her sturdy suitcase, the one with functional wheels. December 23rd arrived, cold and crisp. I showed up at my parents' house with the borrowed suitcase and new swimsuit, practically buzzing with excitement. But something felt off. Mom barely looked me in the eye when she hugged me, and Dad kept clearing his throat in that uncomfortable way of his. Then Jennifer and Tom walked in, and the moment I saw them, I knew something was wrong. Jennifer had that familiar look on her face, the same one she'd worn when she informed me she'd be living in my house rent-free. During dinner, Mom and Jennifer exchanged knowing glances that tied my stomach in knots. For a few minutes, the only sound was the clinking of forks against plates. Then Jennifer set down her wine glass, cleared her throat, and said, "We need to talk." She went on to explain that the restaurant wasn't doing well, and their numbers weren't what they had projected. Mom reached over to squeeze her hand in a gesture of support, and I realized she already knew where this conversation was going. "We've had to make some tough decisions," Jennifer continued, her voice dripping with false regret. "We're going to have to cut some expenses, including the portion we were going to contribute toward the Hawaii trip." My fork hovered midair. Then, as if to justify the insanity, she gestured at the table and said, "We all talked about it and decided the best solution is for Maya to stay behind." The room spun. "But I already paid my share," I stammered. "Yes," Jennifer replied with her signature condescending smile. "That money will help cover the rest of the expenses. We couldn't possibly cancel on everyone. And Tom and I never even got a proper honeymoon because we were so busy starting the restaurant." I glanced at Mom and Dad, expecting them to stand up for me, but they didn't. Mom kept patting Jennifer's hand while Dad studied his plate like it held all of life's answers. "I paid my share," I said again, my voice shaking. $3,000. That was all my savings. "Maya," Mom snapped sharply, making me flinch. "Family helps family. Jennifer and Tom are going through a hard time with the restaurant. The least you can do is be understanding." "Understanding?" I whispered. "Yes. Besides, someone needs to watch the house while we're gone," Mom added breezily, before turning back to Jennifer to discuss hotel arrangements. I stood abruptly, the chair scraping loudly against the floor, but no one even looked up. I retreated to my old bedroom, where their cheerful conversation continued uninterrupted. Lying on my childhood bed that night, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars Grandpa had helped me put up years ago, I made my decision. The next morning, I played my role perfectly. I stood on the porch, smiling and waving as they loaded their luggage into 2 waiting taxis. "Don't forget to water Mom's plants," Jennifer called, adjusting her designer sunglasses. "And check the mail every day," Mom added. "Don't worry about a thing," I replied with a bright smile. Jennifer leaned out the taxi window. "I'll send you lots of photos so you won't feel left out." She laughed as if she'd made the funniest joke in the world. I kept waving until the taxis turned the corner. Then, I got in my car and drove straight to Grandpa's house, my house. Their things were everywhere. Her clothes filled closets that used to hold Grandpa's suits. Their pretentious art replaced his fishing photos. Wedding pictures sat on the mantel where Grandpa's chest set once proudly rested. I started in the master bedroom, packing their belongings methodically. Designer clothes, custom suits, expensive shoes, everything went into boxes. In Grandpa's old study, I found their important documents and added those to the pile. A moving company charged me 3 times the usual rate for Christmas Eve service, but I didn't care. After they cleared the house, I hired a 24-hour locksmith to change every lock. It cost a holiday premium, but the satisfaction was worth every penny. When I returned to campus, my friends were kicking off our annual Orphan Christmas party for those of us who couldn't or didn't want to go home. "Maya," Lisa exclaimed, handing me a cup of hot chocolate. "I thought you'd be in Hawaii by now." "Change of plans," I said with a smile, and for the first time in months, I felt like I was exactly where I needed to be. For the next week, my phone buzzed constantly with Jennifer's Hawaii updates. Each notification felt like a deliberate jab. Pictures of infinity pools, family luau's, and sunset dinners flooded my feed. The captions were the worst. "Making memories with those who matter most. Living our best life." On New Year's Day, my phone exploded with messages. "Maya, why is Jennifer's stuff in our living room? Call me immediately. The locks don't work. Did you change them?" The messages rolled in, each one angrier than the last. Words like selfish, spiteful, and ungrateful filled my screen. But for the first time, I didn't feel the need to defend myself. I silenced my phone and went to breakfast with friends, letting their anger wash over me without response. By the end of the day, I had over 200 missed calls. When Mom's name flashed across the screen for the 21st time, I finally answered. "How dare you?" she yelled. "Do you realize what you've done to your sister?" "I took back what was mine," I said calmly. "Maya, they're struggling, and I needed a family that cared about me," I interrupted. But clearly that's too much to ask. I hung up before she could respond. That was a year ago. I haven't spoken to them since. Through the grapevine, I hear the restaurant went under, and Jennifer and Tom are still living with Mom and Dad. Meanwhile, my property manager found excellent tenants for Grandpa's house, and their rent covers taxes while letting me save a little each month. Sometimes, late at night, I wonder if we'll ever reconcile. But then I remember them drinking champagne in Hawaii on my dime, and realize I don't need their understanding. What I needed and finally have is self-respect.